Hi submarine friends. Well, I'm doing a small project today because today is a holiday, so I have the day off. So I decided to work on the vent valve for the main ballast tank. So there's two main ballast tanks, one back there and one up here. So this one here, well actually both of them had these electric solenoid valves on. Now I don't know if you recall in my previous videos I talked about eliminating those. Those were only for testing purposes. So I've tested this up, now it's time to change it. The solenoid valves work well. They've been reliable. They really have. I've had them on many things, even a log salvage ROV that made thousands and thousands of cycles. And I've never been let down by them, but for some reason, I'd rather the valves were mechanical. So, what I've done is I've taken a regular 1-inch ball valve like this, remove the handle, remove this nut, I put it in the lathe, and the shoulder right here, the stem where the handle is connected, I machined it nice and smooth. Now I did screw up, and I didn't put a bevel on the end, but I can still do that. I just have to put it back in the lathe, and I thought I'd put it back in the lathe when I do the second one so the lathe is set up for it. So anyways, the valve is outside of the hull in the water. So you have to turn the handle and it can't leak obviously. So what I did is I machined this ring. This is a chunk of hydraulic cylinder shaft, and I drilled a hole right here in the side of the conning tower. So what I do is I machined this to fit this shoulder perfectly, and I machined an O-ring groove in there, and I've got an O-ring in there. So now this plugs into this. Now you see I didn't machine a nice bevel on that, so that's why it's hard to get on there and it damages the O-ring. So this now goes right here, and that piece that I machined gets welded into the submarine. And then it sits there just like that. Well, you're wondering, well, what holds the valve in place? Well, then I take this piece and it slips right under here, like so, and it's a real nice tight fit. So this plugs in here, that bushing gets welded in, this piece here now holds the valve, then this piece gets welded to the conning tower, and then I bolt it through. So that locks the valve in place and it won't move. If I have to, I can also weld this piece here to the nipple. But I prefer not to. I would rather make two of these, so there's one on the bottom and one on the top if it's not secure enough. You have to be able to remove this to change O-ring, or the ball valve might start to leak or something, so you want to be able to change it easy. Now, this right here is the perfect spot for the valve, because when you sit in a submarine, you could just reach over nicely and operate that valve. But when I put the sail back on, the conning tower cover, it hits this valve, or it hits right here. So what I have to do is I have to cut a notch right here in the sail, it's called. So when I lower it down, it slips over this, and then I'll just have to make a little bump out cover over this. I'm not really thrilled about that because it might not look right. I mean, nobody's really going to know what it's supposed to look like. It's a one-off machine, but I would prefer it was nice and smooth. But anyways, I can make that bump out, you know, I can make it nice, bondo it a bit, make it look pretty. Anyways, it's more important that it's in the perfect ideal location rather than how it looks. So what happens next is, once this is installed, there's an elbow here, 90-degree elbow, and then we connect a hose or a solid mechanical pipe. And then that travels along here and then along here right beside the steering linkage, and then it goes through the hull, actually right about here where I've got this lifting hook. I'm going to move the lifting hook. It's not heavy enough anyways because it's actually deforming from the weight. So I'll cut this off. I can move it over a little bit. And I've got a heavier one, actually the original one off the propane tank. So if I just go with a heavy duty hose, which is all it needs to be, I'll have to put a cover over it. So some kind of an aluminum, U-shaped cover that goes the full length, because it'll stick above the deck a little bit, and it has to be protected from the sun and from somebody vandalizing it. Because if you cut this line, the submarine would sink. Well, it would only sink to this level, because the submarine cannot sink without the variable ballast tank having water in it. And I did that by design. So if the forward and back ballast tanks ever failed for some reason, the sub will not submerge. Unless you put water in the variable ballast tank. Plus the pilot has to be in it. If I'm not in it and no water goes in the variable ballast tank, it'll just sit there and float. It'll just float at this height instead of this height. So that's what I'm working on right now. So I'm going to get this working nicely, and then I'll make the second one for the other side. But I don't have the valves, but I can make this piece, and I can make these pieces. If I had a valve, I could machine it too, but I just don't have another valve here. So that's okay. That'll give me something to do for today. So that's it. Ciao.